Okay, so welcome to the Node.js build workgroup meeting for May 8th, 2025. We'll follow our standard approach of going through the agenda in the issue that was generated, which was number 4076. Before we get started, does anybody have any announcements that they would like to share? If not, I will ask everybody if you can add yourself to the attendee list in the minutes doc, which I'll paste into the chat. And the one thing I wanted to just get a quick read of the room on before we get into the issues that were tagged, because I forgot to tag it for the agenda, is just the issue I opened to for Malad volunteering to host the meetings. It seems like we don't have too many people who can host, so he's willing. Anybody have any concerns or objections over that? Okay, so given that, I'm just going to make a note on that in the issue, which is issue number 4070, and I will move forward with that. Okay, so back to the agenda. The first one is require physical 2FA for build, workgroup, and web infra method members. I don't know if anybody's been particularly active in that one and wants to take us through it.
I've not really been active in it, but I saw that it was raised. I think it was primarily raised from the web, like from the view of the website, but they seem to have extended the idea to like all of build.
Yep.
Um, I guess it's the right thing to do from a security point of view. I would personally probably jump into less issues immediately if I'm having to go through, additional physical checks. So I don't actually know what it would restrict access to. It kind of had this sort of woolly where possible. So maybe GitHub. I don't know how many of the cloud providers, for example, providers of the actual machines uh, offer physical to 2FA. So we already require two-factor authentication on GitHub, but we've not enforced it being like physical. So um, yeah, it would
And
be
I
a tightening
guess
up. But
that,
it would mean, for example, that you would need some sort of physical device, but whether that's like a key, UBI key or some other form of physical token. Um,
I guess also, so I'll let Ryan go. You've got your hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, there's tooling that exists to, enforce TFA, 2FA, but other than suggesting and strongly urging everyone to use hardware keys and even providing them if possible, there isn't really any way to enforce it. There's no like you have to do this. It's sort of um, it's a good idea. It's something that we should do, but it sort of falls under the whole umbrella of how can we make interacting with the infrastructure more secure? And it's not necessarily like, in my mind, top priority as far as, the next issue on the list, using 1Password for secrets management. It still kind of belies the fact that, like, okay, well, we've got everyone using hardware keys, except all the people who have transitioned off of the infrastructure team that still have infrastructure keys to things that haven't been rotated. It's sort of like it doesn't necessarily solve a thing. It just, improves the idea. And so as a policy idea, I think we should definitely implement it. We should definitely say you should use a hardware key if you can, but there's no enforcement mechanism. And, that's so.
The thing that comes to mind to me is like, I don't know if there's a way where we could limit that impact to our project, right? So say there's a person, they're on the build working group, they contribute to a bunch of open source projects. I don't know if like they set up their GitHub account to only use the hardware physical device for when they interact with the node stuff, I'm guessing it's like we'd basically be telling people you have to use hardware tokens for everything you do in everywhere, which it makes it more of an ask, right? Like if it was an ask just for your stuff doing in the node project, that's one thing, but like to then say, oh, and that's going to apply to all of your daily life things, that's like even another thing to that's maybe that's the same thing that we've said for 2FA non-hardware. Like we basically said it has to be turned on and it's turned on your GitHub account.
Yes, we've done that. So everyone in the Node.js organization, not just
Right.
Bill, but everyone, like all collaborate, yeah, everyone that's
Yeah.
a member of the Node.js organization has to have two FA on. But that's all we've enforced. So I don't even know if it's possible to enforce, beyond that, oh, and it has to be a physical. So and whether it's possible to do that for a subset, so even if it was possible to enforce, whether it would then be possible to enforce for a smaller subset, unless you were trying to roll that out to everyone. But again, then that would be, a huge like. So one of the things that was discussed in the issue is like maybe the foundation could pay for a limited number of keys if it was like limited to building the web infra team, because that's a much smaller number than like the entire membership of.
Yeah.
But I guess coming back to Ryan's point, it may not be enforceable other than you come up with a policy and say this is what we should be doing, and yeah.
But enforce just because you can't enforce it doesn't mean that it doesn't make sense, right? So I think there's the two. There's
So no,
like,
my own personal view on it is that I'm slightly reluctant to do it, but it does also feel like it makes sense.
So like, as a build
it's
team,
hard to object to it from a sort of policy point of view, because it seems to make sense from a, this is critical stuff, we should try and make it more secure, by default. But I do think that this might this will put up barriers to jumping in and investigating issues and fixing issues. So it's a balance, and I guess I'll go along with whatever the rest of the working group wants to vote for on this, or go along with for this.
that was just like
I think this issue is supposed to cover build and the web infra team, but the web infra team isn't really under the build working group, so maybe it needs to be separated into. Maybe it makes sense for that team, and maybe our team we have a slightly different stance, or maybe we have, maybe we want to adopt it as a policy and then rely on sort of trust on the individual members to follow it. But
right. That's where I was coming from, is like, if we as a group decide that it is something that we should do, just because we can't automatically enforce it doesn't mean we don't trust the rest of the members to actually do it, right? So the not being able to enforce it isn't necessarily the deciding factor. It's more like, do we think it's a reasonable ask? Are we all willing to do it, right? Is kind of the, and I don't think we need to decide that immediately, but like, because I kind of agree with Ryan that like, maybe there's some other things which are more important to address first. Like the transition to 1Password, if that is going to significantly improve things in terms of rotation. I'm not sure if that's the case. Like this, just remind me how it would improve the rotation.
So the issue right now is if you have access to the pass repository,
Yeah.
And your access is revoked, and we add a commit and we remove you from the keys, you still have the keys to decrypt everything from the point up until you got removed.
Right.
You could just check out that commit and see all of those secrets. So unless we rotate all those secrets when we transition someone off the team, they essentially still have all those secrets.
Yeah, okay.
And so then if they have an old laptop, that laptop
Yep.
gets stolen, someone gets access to that, like there's a lot of different vectors there where truly transitioning someone off the team, like when we remove someone from the GitHub organization, they lose access to everything there and there's no coming back, right? There's no like historic, but
Well,
and
if you
so there's
remove
just
them from node private, right? I think we might remove them from node private,
Yeah,
which
the
would-
issue is
Right, but
that
they could still have a git clone that
right. So but then you could also make the argument they could have still decrypted everything and have all the plain text things. So like we're not, because we don't rotate, we're trusting the people. But I do agree that it's like one step harder and better, right? Like if
Mhm.
somebody has taken all the stuff, they've kept a copy, they've decrypted it, like they still will have access to everything.
Right.
However, if you haven't taken an active act, like if you haven't tried to circumvent it, it probably, it does add an extra layer of security, which most people won't have. So yeah, no, I agree that at least you don't still have access to something.
I think there are different. I think it's two slightly different things. The first thing is, yes, we probably should be rotating things,
Sure.
more than we are,
Mhm.
and that I think is independent of how we store the secrets. I am, positive in maybe moving things to one password because I think that might make it easier for managing, but I don't think that they're intrinsically tied. So, we could rotate secrets with the current setup. It just, the hardest part with rotating secrets is the actual rotation because, you still need to go and update the machine to then make sure that, the old keys are removed and you can't like log in with the old keys once you've put the new keys on the machines. I don't think anyone's really had time to look at it. I know very, very long time ago, there was I'm trying to remember, was it an Apache project? There was something called Bastion, and I don't know if it's still called Bastion or some other name now, but there was some sort of tooling for rotating keys on machines. So, there are other solutions for key management. That's not in terms of password management, which is what 1Password is for. So, there are different aspects of this, but definitely in terms of secrets and rotating things, you've got things on machines, and then you've also got things on service accounts, and
Right.
both of them, I think would make sense to rotate. And maybe for passwords, 1Password would make it easier to rotate and keep them in one place. For actual keys to log into machines, then that's another separate thing. Which again, it could be in 1Password, it could be in the existing setup. But yes, from a policy point of view, I think probably rotation is probably something overdue, but it would require the time, someone spending the time to do that when we feel that it's necessary.
Yeah, I guess like if we remove people from node private, build secrets, that does effectively revoke their access to the repo.
Other than for their own local clones. So
Right.
yes, if we were then to rotate the secrets and then push it and they don't have access to read the new commit, then yes, that will be safe.
I'm really just comparing
Yeah.
to 1Password, right? Like
I don't believe that it makes much difference in terms of security as long as we do the rotation where the key or password is stored. It
I would
might make things
agree,
easier
but
for the people that still have access to be able to read it. So for example, instead of having to do a whole complicated GPG decryption to read, I think in 1Password you can log into 1Password and like read it through the web UI. So,
Yep.
so if you're just looking for a password, then 1Password is probably easier from an operational point of view for the people that do and are supposed to have access.
Yep.
But I don't think it actually changes the rotation bit, which is the main problem with the rotation bit is we're not doing it. Regardless of where we are storing the credentials, we are just not at the moment doing the rotation.
I'm presuming that rotating might be easier with 1Password than it would be with the PAS system, but maybe not. But maybe
It's your
not.
definition of like whether it's easier to update something in 1Password versus updating the file in the secrets repository and committing directly. It's whatever you're used to, but yeah, but I think what we're talking about there is the user experience of the people that needs to access the secrets. The actual aspect of how secure is this in terms of people that had prior access, then I don't think that matters whether it's 1Password or the secrets repo, because that point that you might have a local git clone and so you have potentially out of date information. Well, that's the same 1Password, right? If you've ever had access at 1Password, if you then record that outside of 1Password, we can't control that. So
right.
again, you know, being in one password or being in the secrets repo, in terms of the security of, so long as we rotate that, then the people that we've removed shouldn't have access to the new updated secret, whatever that is, whether that's in one password or the existing repository. And that
I
whole point
agree.
about, oh, they have access to stuff that was there prior. Well, yeah, they had access because we trusted them to have access at that point.
Right.
So if we now
It's
say they're no longer in it, then yeah, well, the right thing to do is to move things on so that whatever they have access to is no longer the valid information.
right. I think the difference being that there's a artifact of that access, uh, in general on, people's Git clones. They, will have
Yeah,
them typically, and that artifact exists on machines that may get out of their control. Whereas if you have someone that has access to one password and they get their one password access severed, unless they've deliberately taken steps to preserve that, then
yeah.
they don't then there's not an artifact of access sitting around. So that's really the main difference. It's not
Mhm.
huge. It's but it also
Yeah.
yeah, that's sort of the main
Yeah,
gist there.
I
But
that's where I think like the rotation part, yeah, but we haven't really done it. So I think we
mhm.
should start from our current point. And then I think exactly what Ryan said is the difference is that like, yeah, people do the clone, they've got that lying around. If they didn't take an action to delete and clean them all up, they're still potentially there versus the one password. You don't have that. So that is like an improvement.
Mm.
I think personally, it's also maybe a little easier with the one password versus the clone and the secrets repo and all that. Like,
Yeah, if I need a password, I can get it on my phone, like that's a lot harder to do with the secrets repo.
Well, then the question then is it more secure or less secure? If you
yeah,
can, no, I'm just yeah.
yeah,
I am not objecting at all to the one password thing. I'm just saying
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
the one
No, those
password
are
thing on its own doesn't solve the leaking of the person no longer being involved in build now still has access to infrastructure. Well, they will still have access even if everything was in one password, unless we rotate. So the rotate thing is a separate thing from the one password thing.
yes.
I think we should do both,
Yep.
but one does not. Yeah, we don't have to do the one password to do the rotation. I think we should do both,
yeah.
but yeah, it's not like we go to one password, we've automatically solved the other problem. Well, no, we haven't solved anything if we don't do the rotation. We do solve the maybe if people are finding it difficult at the moment to read secrets out of the existing setup, then one password will be easier, as Ryan said. You can then argue if it's easier, if it's more secure or less secure, but that's another argument. But yeah, I think we've almost gone off on a slight tangent in terms of securing stuff.
Yeah, and all of this falls underneath a kind of a overarching larger umbrella of how do we
Yeah.
keep access to these sensitive systems
Hmm.
as secure as possible. And it's
Yeah.
we have another initiative at the Linux Foundation right now on our in our project team to kind of audit GitHub repositories and GitHub actions and how people have their things set up, as far as like, what are your branch protection rules? What are these things? And so that's a whole nother set of things we can look at, So I think that there is an
Hmm.
ongoing, ever evolving ways to keep your stuff secure. And, this all just falls underneath it.
Yeah.
So I think on this one, the main roadblock that I think was like we do have some things that automatically check out the repo, decrypt, and
Hmm.
like for me, if that was result, if you have an alternative that still lets us do what we need to do, I haven't heard anybody say, "Oh no, let's not move over."
Yep. And I haven't started in on this yet, so I haven't gotten into the details of like,
Yeah.
oh, this isn't going to work. Like I haven't haven't found those yet, but I haven't found that like, okay, everything works fine. Like so that's the.
But again, I think we've gone off now on a tangent and
Yep.
off from the physical 2FA issue we started talking about. So I think for that one, it's like, do we adopt it as a policy? And then if we did adopt it as a policy, I guess then there would be an ask to the foundation to actually provide those physical keys.
Hmm.
Um,
I guess like, do we know of any organizations who have done that and that have an approach that works?
I mean, our whole infrastructure team uses YubiKeys
And
for
does that
access to
basically
things.
force like all your GitHub interaction that uses those YubiKeys?
Yes. Like and this is where occasionally it does, if I'm not logged in on my phone, then yes, I'll have to like get my NFC YubiKey and touch it to my phone to allow me to log in on GitHub on my phone. It does sort of require that you have your key with you everywhere to access GitHub. So that hasn't been an issue for me, but I'm mostly always around my keys, so I don't do a lot of travel and do a lot of
Right.
but
I mean, is it? I don't know. Like
and it's also not hard, right? It's not a hard requirement. There's always fallbacks to your printed off codes, your TFA codes, your passkey. Like it can use passkeys. It's in general we try and use a hardware key where we can, but sometimes it's not available and there's fallbacks. And certain fallbacks are better than others. Like we strongly recommend nobody uses SMS to as a second factor of
Mhm.
authentication because SMS is easily subverted. So
I mean, is it at all practical that where people have two GitHub IDs where they're like, I'm MH Dawson build, and then we give access to those IDs versus their one that they use for most things, right? Like,
yeah, that's an alternative if they really strongly do not want to add this sort of workflow in, but I'm sure that comes with other issues of, well, I'd like all my contributions to be reflected on my
sure,
main
yeah, they
profile
come
or,
under a different user, right? Which is
yeah.
I also thought that generally GitHub didn't encourage multiple accounts per user.
Yeah, I'm sure GitHub wants a single identity for people, but I definitely have had work identities and personal identities.
yeah. What would be nice is, are there any projects out who've enforced that requirement? Like, and could we talk to them? Right? Like that would be a but maybe that's like I can ask of the people who are, the suggesters. I'm gonna say from the discussion in the build work group today, we are if there are any open source projects who already require physical 2FA for some of their collaborators. Of course, and if so, can you let us know who they are, as maybe we can reach out to them to see what their experience has been. Because I think that would be a good next step, right? Like, hey, if there's some other projects that have required this, and we talk to the people who are in those projects, and they're like, it wasn't an issue. That gives us some data, or they're like, oh yeah, it's the most painful thing ever for me, right? Like that might
Mhm.
give us some more data to for the discussion.
But it's probably going to be a small pool of projects that actually run their own infrastructure, on the scale that, or well, just run their own infrastructure full stop. That would actually have this kind of question even pop up. So
Yeah.
it would be good, if you did find other projects that have done this. But yeah, I suspect the natural number of projects that would even be in this.
Yeah, but I would look at it like
Um,
for org owners, like GitHub org owners,
mhm.
is it that much different? Like, the org owners can do a lot of stuff. So why not have physical 2FA in that situation? Right? It's not
Yeah.
not just the build related things where this is a requirement. So like, I think so maybe I'm just where I'm going is like, maybe there'll be some experience where a project did it for that role instead, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
I don't know if it makes, do we want to continue discussing that or move on to the next issue?
Yeah, I feel like it's just sort of an endless can of worms.
Yeah, unless we're all like, yeah, let's do it today. Maybe we leave it on the agenda and we can, I posted that question. Maybe we'll get like, hey, here's the team that's the 10 projects that have done it. And it's like, yep,
Yeah.
okay, that makes us all feel better that like, yeah, we just should do it and we can talk to them and get some feedback or whatever. So the next one is transition from DigiCert Keylocker to Azure Trusted Signing.
Let's see. Have I updated this issue with any new details? Oh, I did not see this last week or 2 days ago comment. Yeah, so I have the trusted signing stuff set up on Azure. It should be working. I've been working with another Open JavaScript Foundation project, Appium, to implement it in their GitHub workflow to verify that it works. But I can also work with Node on this one because theirs is going to be slightly different. The way that the nature of the secrets that we hand out. So it's all of the pathway is built. Now we just need to make sure it works. So I think, and I did not see this. These comments from Stefan. So
Okay, so it sounds though like it's still moving forward, right? So,
yes,
and I guess really nothing from the build working group's perspective to chat about other than like is it moving forward because I think there's a deadline, right?
It's not a deadline, it's a limited number of activations on the way we're currently signing.
yeah.
So eventually they will run out if we don't migrate. So
There's
I don't know what sort of rate we're still eating through. It really depends on how many releases I think we're doing, how many builds we push through.
yeah. It seemed like we had about 2.5 months left of time to get this changed. 3 weeks ago we had 432 signatures left. I think we're probably down. I could check again, but it's probably closer to 420 at this point.
Yeah, but it's not a hard and fast deadline. It's we have a limited number of uses, and once those users run out, then we won't be able to sign anything until we transition
Without
over.
paying, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't think we can sign. Well, yeah, without paying. We either need to get more users added to the old setup, or transition to
Yeah,
the new one, which sounds it does sound a lot more make more sense to move to the new thing. So getting that working sounds like the right.
that is something worth investigating is whether or not we could just buy another 1,000 signatures if we need a little more time, something like that. And what the cost is, because the DigiCert cost is the main driver behind moving over to Azure Trusted. Um, it's just
Yeah.
it's just a much better system, and also about a third of the cost,
Right.
and a third of the cost for Foundation to provide signing for all of its projects as opposed to one project. So it's
Yeah, I guess like I don't see there's anything for us as a team here to
no,
chat about unless you're telling us we're not going to make it and we can't pay.
right. No, this
It
is
does. I
just
think it does make sense for Ryan for you to like if you could figure out like, well, if we need to buy another 1,000 signatures because you can't quite get it done in time, that's a good. But like I'm willing to look at it from the build working group. If you're telling us it's going to happen, like we don't need to worry about it, then what do we need to talk about, right? Like, but if you're telling us there's a problem, then we can chat about the problem to see what we need to do as a team, right? But I think I'm hearing not a problem yet.
not a problem yet.
Okay. So we can kind of leave it on the agenda so we can continue to have you tell us it's not a problem. When we get together or the alternate, then hopefully it works out, right?
Yeah, it's more of a status update.
Yeah.
The Azure site is all set up and we have secrets ready to go. And now that I'm reading this, I'm like, oh, I see. We have there's a vault at Digicert that they're also using, and I'm like, I did not know that. So this is helpful. But I also
Yeah.
didn't see the update to this issue.
Okay. Okay, so we
Okay.
might as well move on to the next issue then, which is replace works on ARM machines affected by Equinix Metal
So
Sunset.
I don't think I've seen an up. I sent an email out a couple of weeks ago to follow up, and I don't think I've seen a reply to that. So I'll nudge again. It might be the right point in time to also mention the OSU situation, where there is another item which is not on the agenda because I forgot to tag it, which is 4073, and that was Oregon State University have announced that, without additional funding, there is a risk of the open source lab closing later this year. It's not just our project that has resources on at the open source lab. For us in particular, it would affect all of our Linux and PowerPC VMs, half of our AX machines, and the remaining Linux ARM machines that are not already in that first issue about Equinix Metal, shutting down next year. So we already knew that we needed to replace, Linux and ARM machines, and yeah, the the OSU situation, that's the worst case scenario if that closes and puts those three platforms at risk. So I don't know, other than for awareness, if there's much else for our group to be doing on that front. I know that separately there are bodies that are reaching out to OSU and may be able to offer more assistance. I guess that's as much as I can say at the moment. And I guess we just need to watch that space and see what happens. But on the Equinix Metal machines, I will take the action to try and push that and see what the next step is to try and move that along. But yeah.
And it's just later this year. There's no specific, like, we don't know if that's 2 months or 5 months, right?
There is a blog post that was posted, which was in
Put it in chat.
This thing, and the blog post said that they needed to provide. Let me just read it again. Anyway, that leadership needed to be given an update on any funding changes by Wednesday, the 14th of May. So,
right.
I don't know that there's anything that we specifically in the build working group can do. Maybe, if there are, you can go, if you're in an organization that has resources there separately, you could talk to your organization about possibly increasing funding or adding funding to OSU. But they have a decision point, not for shutting down, but for deciding on whether it's viable to continue, I guess.
Yeah, I was just wondering if we had any info on, like, if it's next month, like, how much notice are we going to get, right? Like, okay, there's May 14th, that then they make some sort of decision. If that decision is it shuts down immediately versus it shuts down in 6 months, that's a little bit of a different risk for us.
Well, they said shut down later this year, but
right.
I don't know what that
Okay, so we don't know. I was just asking, like, do we know anything more than later this year? Right?
Unless anyone on this call knows any different, all I know is what's in that blog post.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and, I can try and discover more. Rudy, my boss, and about 7 other people at the LF on our IT team are all alumni of the Open State Lab, OSL. So they all know Lance pretty well.
Yeah,
I've worked with Lance for years, going back to the Drupal project. So, like, we should be able to find out what's going on. There was a Hacker News thread about it, and in that thread, Mitchell Hashimoto, I think that's his name. No, well, the guy who founded Vagrant and HashiCorp,
Yeah.
He showed up in that thread and he was like, when I was first starting with my open source projects, they tried to work with me really well. I'll see what I can do. So I don't know
Right.
if that was, he is a
Yeah,
founder that has the exit status that has,
Sure.
funds to help this
I've
or
heard
not.
I've heard other we'll see what we can do, but
Yeah.
whether that actually materializes, in
Sure.
time, but yeah, I think for now this is an FYI. I guess there is a worst case possible scenario. Hopefully that doesn't come to pass. And yeah, without any further details, it's hard to know, how much planning would we need to do to plan for something that may or may not happen. But given that it's not 0% chance of happening, I think it's at least worth having it here to be aware that this is going to materialistically affect our ability to do Node on some platforms,
Hmm.
which is the reality. So
I
yeah,
I would suggest that we just come up with a high level plan of like, let's say OSL is going to shut down in September. What would we do? What do we need to do? We need to secure hosts or communicate to the
yeah,
community, like
we
just have a contingency plan,
yeah. So
essentially.
I mean, one of the reasons that traditionally, so I know this came up when we first talked about transitioning some of the management to LFIT.
Hmm.
Um, One of the reasons that for some platforms, we've got multiple providers. And the obvious question is then why have we got machines spread over to providers? One of the reasons is, well, if something untowards happens to one provider, then we're not completely we're not completely stuck. And if we then need to find more machines, at least we've got some breathing space to
Hmm.
we're not completely stopped. Now, obviously, of the three platforms that I listed, um, for AX, for example, half of our AX machines are on IBM Cloud and the other half are at OSU. So yes, OSU going away, that's half of our extra resources, but we could continue in Node with half the resources, on a temporary basis at IBM. And to be honest, I'm comfortable going back to IBM and saying, if we need more IX machines, what's the solution there? Because AX is an IBM platform.
Hmm.
On the Linux and Power, we currently don't have anything, so we would need to find, possibly IBM will be the first point of call for that. But yeah, trying to find more Linux and Power resources somewhere else other than OSU, that probably is the biggest platform at risk in terms of we just don't have anywhere at the moment else for that. For
No, I,
the
I just have to interject because I have to drop off. So
Okay,
Richard, I'm going to make you the owner of
okay,
the meeting and I will catch up and look at the
yeah.
notes afterwards. So
And for Linux and ARM, our two providers are Equinix Metal and OSU. Both of them currently now, Equinix Metal is definitely going away eventually, and OSU is a possibility. So that one is going to be an interesting. I suppose what we need to try and square off what happens with the Equinix Metal machines, and maybe that is, if we get those moved somewhere, then maybe that is the mitigation for the OSU side of things.
Sure.
Um,
And that again comes back to
yeah,
ARM wants Node to work on ARM, so we got to talk to ARM about
yeah,
how we can do that. And IBM
yeah.
wants
No,
Node to work on
there is an
IIX,
email.
so
There is an email chain, but I just need to keep prodding it, I guess. The
yeah,
first time was me just not responding to something because I missed it, and then I responded, and we haven't had an update. So yeah, we just need to keep prodding that and make sure that. I think both Arm and us are keen to continue, and it's just making sure it happens.
right.
Um, and yeah, the other platform is like I think we can kick off discussions within IBM/Red Hat to see if there are alternatives there if need be. But yeah, at the moment that is it. Yeah. So yeah, for now I think we wait and see what happens, and like you said, maybe try and explore backup plans should the worst happen. Yeah.
Great.
So I guess if there's nothing else on that one, should we move on to the next one, which is the Orca infrastructure?
Yes. I have finally hit the full stride of the Orca infrastructure. The last stated that it was in was at the x64 VMs were having a hard time writing to this shared file system because it was changing the permissions and it couldn't create temporary files because it would create them as the wrong user and then it couldn't change them once it was the wrong user. So I have updated the images to all be the proper user. I did the release machines this morning, so hope and then reran a tarball. So that's actually probably running right now. May actually be done. I started right before this meeting. Oh yeah, looks like it worked. Great. So yeah, 8 minutes. Awesome. That was taking an hour before. So the C caches work. Everything works. Everything seems to be going swimmingly there. The final step in that is to ensure that everything that I've been doing, like there's been a lot of like, okay, I just need to like do some manual interventions here to determine whether or not this works or that works or what strategy, just doing a lot of troubleshooting that wasn't necessarily migrating all that troubleshooting back into the full automated sort of Packer build. And so I need to capture everything that's been done to get things in a workable state and see what can be returned back into not Ansible steps, Packer steps, so that when we go to build the OSX 14 or 15 images with newer versions of Xcode, it's sort of a push button sort of thing, as opposed to push a button and do a lot of steps and do a lot of manual interventions and do a lot of mounts and that sort of stuff. So that, and then also document everything that's been going on here, because working with Orca has been, the VPN is challenging. It's a very challenging architecture to have. In order to work on this, you have to be connected to their VPN, and their VPN is an old Cisco thing that's really weird. So I found out a lot of idiosyncrasies there and a lot of weirdness, and I should write that down so everybody else knows it. Um, that's basically it for
Okay.
OSX. I noticed there's a couple of old issues kicking around that have been labeled OSX. It's like, okay, we don't need to worry about these cleanup scripts. Actually, we could just remove them. So,
Yeah,
so
sounds good to me.
yeah.
Next issue is the replacement Equinix x64 servers.
This is
Yeah.
Everything has been replaced. Everything has been migrated. The backup server, everything except the one final server, which is the unencrypted / the backup to the backup, but also it's the rsync server. So I haven't begun work on that yet. I need to just I need to assess what's in Ansible as far as what could, is there anything in there? I need to assess like how important is it that we have have it in Ansible, or is this something that we should just carry over? Is there a way that we can copy the actual SmartOS VM over to one of the SmartOS hosts that we're going to transition it to? I mean, maybe there's a way to just like wholesale move it without changing anything. Like so
Yeah, I
I
don't know
haven't I
exactly.
haven't begun the strategy of like how to touch this thing.
Yeah.
Um,
So I think there was a beginning of May deadline in terms of
May 2026.
was it? No,
Yeah.
I thought there was a deadline in terms of if you don't migrate by this May, they were going to start charging for usage of the existing. Let's see, it would have been recorded in here. Oh God, this is a long issue.
Oh, I did not see that date.
Yes, here we are.
Oh,
So there was as part of the one-day process, we are ending our credit program. We will continue to provide credits through to April 30th, which is now
yeah.
passed.
No, This is
Now, I don't know who would be getting the bill for the Equinix. So for the account that that machine is under. So that might be MNX. um, but yeah.
I'm so sorry that I missed this this comment on here and all of these responses. Yeah, my GitHub is a mess once I joined the LF because I ended up joining about 1,000 organizations and
Yeah.
I've been trying to fight my notifications ever since. So I did not see these. Okay, well, I will highly prioritize this and find out what's going on. I thought we had more time.
I think that's the end of the agenda. So does anyone have anything else they want to bring up? Okay, I guess not. Thanks for your time, and I guess we'll see you next time. Okay.
Great. Cheers.